Tyrion Lannister is one of the most popular characters in Game of Thrones, and for good reason. Tyrion is funny and clever, but also flawed and pained. He shows kindness to the vulnerable, and the back of his hand to dickheads like Joffrey. He's had a pretty rough time of it. He's been falsely accused of murder, imprisoned, caught up in a war, then politics, ended up in another battle, had his face cut up, was forced into a deeply uncomfortable marriage, was falsely accused of murder again, betrayed by his lover, sentenced to death, and ended up killing his dad. Or was it his dad? Officially, Tyrion is the son of Tywin Lannister and Tywin's cousin Joanna. But a controversial fan theory claims that Tyrion's real father is the Mad King Aerys Targaryen. So, back in the bad old days of the Mad King's reign, the Targaryens were in charge, and young Joanna a companion of Rhaella, Aerys' sister and eventual queen. Meanwhile, Tywin grew up frustrated with his father Lord Tytos, who had a reputation for weakness and was openly mocked to the point that Tywin began to mistrust laughter itself. Tywin became determined to be the powerful, respected, even feared man that his father was not. So he slaughtered the rebellious Tarbecks on the Reigns of Castamere, began restoring the prestige and power of House Lannister, and was made Hand of the King. Not long after, Tywin and Joanna were married. Tywin loved Joanna. Apparently he smiled at their wedding, and Tywin doesn't smile much. But something else happened that night. According to Sir Barristan, who was Kingsguard at the time, King Aerys wanted Joanna for years. At her wedding to Tywin, Aerys made a drunken joke that implied that he wanted to sleep with her, and later he took liberties. We don't know exactly what those liberties were. It probably wasn't sex, and it was too early to have been Tyrion's conception anyway, but what this shows is that King Aerys lusted for Tyrion's mother, and did something to her on her wedding night. In A Storm of Swords, Joffrey tells Sansa that kings often sleep with whoever they want, including married women. So King Aerys not only wanted Joanna, he probably could have had her. Aerys Targaryen might have fathered Tyrion. But just quickly, it has been questioned whether Joanna was even at King's Landing with Aerys at the time of Tyrion's conception. It seems likely that she was, because Tywin presumably would have been there as Hand of the King, and Joanna must have been with Tywin if not Aerys for Tyrion's conception. That said, Joanna was apparently at Casterly Rock shortly before giving birth to Tyrion. She died giving birth to Tyrion, by the way. So it's unclear. Maybe Joanna was at King's Landing with Aerys and that's when Tyrion was conceived, or maybe Joanna was at Casterly Rock the whole time and it couldn't have been Aerys. Or for all we know, Aerys could have fathered Tyrion at Casterly Rock. Basically, it's inconclusive and it may have been Aerys. So if it was Aerys who fathered Tyrion, does Tywin know? It's conceivable that he never knew. Maybe Joanna was threatened into keeping it secret. And Tywin's ignorance of Jaime and Cersei's relationship shows that he's impressively good at being ignorant of the sexual proclivities of his loved ones. But it makes a lot of sense if Tywin did know, firstly because he outright says it a couple of times, and also because it explains Tywin's hatred for Tyrion. This hatred is usually said to be because Tyrion killed Joanna in childbirth, which is kind of a ridiculous reason to hate the kid, or he hates Tyrion for making a mockery of House Lannister by publicly drinking and whoring. Even that is kinda hard to believe. Tywin has been an absolute cunt to Tyrion well before Tyrion was drinking and whoring. Tyrion was just 16 when Tywin refused to let him travel and instead put him in charge of all the drains and cisterns within Casterly Rock, and just 13 when he had Tyrion's love Tysha raped by his guards. Like, fuck, who could do that to their own son? Jaime and Cersei have their personality defects, but Tywin doesn't do anything to them. Not without good reason, anyway. Further, Tywin disowns Tyrion when Tywin is obsessed with his legacy. Is it really worse for him to have Tyrion as an heir than no heir at all? Tywin knowing, or suspecting, Tyrion to be Aerys' son makes all of this make sense. When Aerys made Jaime Kingsguard, and therefore ineligible to inherit Casterly Rock, Aerys made his bastard Tyrion the heir to Tywin's legacy. That spits in the face of everything Tywin works for. So of course Tywin disowns Tyrion, of course he treats the Mad King's son like shit, and of course he sacks Aerys' city shortly after the thing with Jaime. The real question is why Tywin would allow Tyrion to live as a Lannister at all. Maybe because despite being the Mad King's bastard, despite being a dwarf, Tyrion is Joanna's son, a Lannister, and the son of the woman Tywin loved more than anything. It might even be a promise me Tywin sort of a situation. So Tywin treats Tyrion pretty abhorrently, but still ensures he lives a very comfortable life as a member of one of the great houses, funds him with plenty of gold, and only tries to have him killed occasionally. You know, by putting him on the front lines of this battle for no clear reason. Maybe Tywin figured that way he could get rid of Tyrion without directly kinslaying. Anyway. So, here's the next piece of evidence. It's a common Targaryen trait to have dreams of dragons, often prophetic dreams. Daenerys, Aemon, Daeron, and Daemon Targaryen are all known to have dragon dreams. The other character who dreams of dragons is Tyrion. Tyrion's interest in dragons, though, is clearly a different thing to the dreams had by Dany and others. There's no evidence of Tyrion having literal dreams about dragons at all, certainly nothing like this stuff. The likely explanation is that Tyrion just liked dragons, because dragons are cool. The reference to Tyrion's dragon dreams is maybe a hint, but it's not a strong one. So now Tyrion's appearance. Tyrion has one green eye and one black one, and hair that is both pale blonde and black. Lannisters are endlessly described as having golden blonde hair, but the pale blonde of Tyrion's hair seems more similar to Targaryen hair, which is generally described as silver blonde. It might be silly to pay this much attention to hair color, but as we were taught in the first book, seed is strong, and hair color can tell a lot about someone's parentage. Tyrion's pale blonde hair is more similar to the Targaryen silver than Lannister gold, so that could be a hint to his parentage. So Tyrion also has mismatched eyes. There's another character with mismatched eyes in the song, Aerys, a bastard of Aegon IV Targaryen. And like the two-coloured hair, the two-coloured eyes could symbolically indicate Tyrion's mixed blood. Maybe. A final note on his appearance. It's been suggested that Tyrion's dwarfism might be the result of Targaryen genetic weirdness, or possibly the result of attempted abortion. Don't know how biology works in the world of Ice and Fire, but we have no precedent for either of those things occurring, so they don't seem strong pieces of evidence. A final hint, and possibly a big one. If Tyrion is a Targaryen, he could fit very nicely into the prophecy of the three heads of the dragon. Tyrion, Dany, and Jon are the three main characters. They all have Targaryen blood. Each of their mothers died in childbirth. Each of them have had to kill someone they love. Each could correspond to one of the three living dragons with which they could fulfill the prophecy, unite the Seven Kingdoms, and defeat the evil others, and ride off for a party on the Summer Isles. Or something. It seems to work, but does it suit the cynical world George R. R. Martin has created? Does the ridiculed, disempowered dwarf have to turn out to be a magical dragon prince who saves the day, or can he have value just as a man? Are prophecies really even a thing anyway? Do they magically influence people's destinies in the Song of Ice and Fire, or do people fulfill them through their knowledge of them? We're several thousand pages in, and we've still never really clearly seen prophecy at work, so the three heads of the dragon seem a shaky reason to believe Tyrion to be a Targaryen. One of the main reasons why the theory ultimately is doubtful is that while Tyrion being a Targaryen bastard does make his awful relationship with Tywin easier to understand, it makes it something less. Jenna Lannister says that, more than Jaime, Tyrion is Tywin's true son. Tyrion has all of Tywin's cunning, calculating nature, and political skill, but in the form of a dwarf which Tywin, so sensitive to mockery and the appearance of weakness, cannot bring himself to respect. There's so much irony in that Tyrion's drinking and whoring is surely a consequence of his brutal mistreatment by his father, making him feel worthless and unloved. But the vices that Tywin hates Tyrion for are vices not only that he caused, but that he shares. Remember, Tyrion found Shae in Tywin's bed before he killed her, which mirrors something Tywin hated his father Tytos for. Late in life, Tytos took a common woman as a mistress and let her steal his dead wife's jewelry. After Tytos' death, Tywin punished the woman cruelly, running her naked through the streets of Lannisport and forcing her to publicly confess to being a thief and a harlot. So then late in his own life, after the death of his own wife, Tywin sleeps with the common woman and lets her wear his jewelry, the Hand of the King necklace. What Tywin hates in Tyrion is what he recognizes in himself. When Tywin sits there, bleeding out, resolutely not shitting gold, and tells Tyrion, "You're no son of mine," it doesn't mean Tyrion is a secret Targaryen bastard, it means something much more. It means Tywin has rejected his true-born son, refused him, and tormented him because he could not bear to look upon a twisted version of himself. And then Tyrion murders Tywin, with all the cold brutality of his father. It's tragic, it's complex, it's the human heart in conflict with itself. It's what George R. R. Martin's writing is really all about, not dragon writing and happy endings. So yes, Tyrion has some kind of Targaryen-ish characteristics, and yes, it's conceivable that King Aerys, old dirty bastard that he is, forced himself on Joanna and fathered Tyrion. But there's no really strong evidence, and it cheapens one of the most interesting relationships in the series. So for these reasons, it seems possible, but quite unlikely, that Tyrion is a Targaryen. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more, subscribe or share and follow on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks.